we're going to get launched into, I think, the comments from the viewers on our last show.
Yes, indeed, Gordon. They are interesting and complimentary at the same time. George Ross is saying Scotland is the only country to discover oil, then become poorer. Now, this is to be replaced with electricity. He's got a point. There's a few here. Blue Shield, Raymond, Gersten 242, Derek J and Ice Simskin, all saying that they're Rangers fans and are lifetime supporters of independence. They're saying, come on, we have more Rangers fans than you think supporting Indy. Indy and Blue knows we are Indy supporters. So there's a few got in touch saying that just because they support Rangers doesn't mean to say they follow the Union Jack and all that kind of stuff. Football and politics are different for them, which is nice to hear.
Very good to hear, yeah. It's always encouraging when you hear actually people coming on and telling us this. It challenges people's assumptions.
It does, Gordon, exactly. I'll carry on if you don't mind. Lexi Webb says, I'm listening in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, and I keep thinking that everything you guys say is pretty much what is swirling in my head most of the time. Keep up the good work. We will get there eventually. Helen is saying, Gordon and Nori, you both continue to impart to us who tune in information that we might not otherwise be privy to. Not only is your duo of Hodma Jacket really informative and interesting, you ensure it is an enjoyable vehicle which we can look forward to.
Oh, well, it's lovely. It's so nice to know that somebody appreciates what you do.
Yeah, always. It makes us come back the week after and week after when we get these kind of comments.
Yeah, also, I think, Nori, it's important, just before we go too much further, to remind people that if they do like the programme, it's important that they like, comment and share it, and also ring the notification bell so that they know when we're going to go live in the future. That all helps the algorithm, and we really appreciate this.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that, Gordon. You're absolutely right. People, especially folk who are searching for us, will go, oh, they've got X amount of numbers. Listen, it must be good. So they gauge on what we're saying by the numbers we get viewing. That's just a fact of life. So to get more people watching us, I mean, I was absolutely humbled. So were you, I know. Last week we were averaging 3,000 people tuning in. We're going to be greedy and ambitious. We're wanting 4,000. So if you can share on every social media platform you can think of, get us out there. It's not for any. It's not for myself and Gordon's ego. It's not for any cash result. We don't get paid for this. It's just to get information and news out to people who might otherwise not get it. That's all we do it for.
Absolutely, Nori. Yeah. So, what have you got in the post bag today?
Well, Angie Gall says, I believe a unionist government would reintroduce tuition fees, then prescriptions, etc., etc. So she's worried that if we don't vote in the SNP at the next election, we're going to get a lot of the unionists tearing up the devolution settlement that we once had from the early SNP. And she goes, and that's why I'm voting SNP only in the constituency. She's quite right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Of course,
ISP or I for I on the list.
Yeah, I think, people are worried that they will lose things like their free prescriptions and all the other benefits that the SNP has secured for us. And we're often accused, Nora, you and I, of bashing the SNP too much and not actually letting people know of all the good things that the SNP has managed to achieve during its time in office. And to be fair, this is true. They have achieved a great deal. It's just that sadly in recent years, I think since Nicola Sturgeon's period in office, they've taken their eye off the ball, really, and all the momentum that was gained during the period with Alex Salmond seems to have been lost, which I think is a real shame.
It is, Gordon, but we're into a period of high politics right now with the UN. It might be as well the ICJ are going to be involved with Scotland's fight for independence. The stakes have been upped. We can't rely on baby boxes to win over supporters. It's past, Gordon. That's devolution. And it's all very well to look back on things that we've got and we treasure because we're Scots and we look after each other. But over the last 4 or 5 years in particular, the SNP have gone down the privatisation route for funding public facilities. That is not the way to go. Commonweal have done extensive work on how you can bring it back into the public domain. But, you know, as we'll find out later in the show, if you go out to the private market and you introduce free ports and SEZs, then baby boxes don't compare. They don't compare with the devastation that they're going to bring. And you can't balance that out. I'm sorry, that's the hard realities of it. And for people to still come on and say, yeah, but they're green free ports, they're a different kind of free ports. No, they're not. Stop being gaslit. They are the same thing. You cannot tell the difference. And they're a danger to the way our country is being run. So always keep that in mind. Always keep that in mind.
They do,
Andy is saying, great chat, you guys, with just 306. It's less than that now, Andy, because it's another week gone. With so many days remaining, the Scottish independence movement must urgently unite around a coordinated strategic plan for Vote 1 and 2 to deliver a clear and credible platform for independence. But he goes on, Gordon, I am concerned that multiple independence candidates in each seat will split the Indie vote, allowing a unionist win.
Well, that would only happen if the smaller unionist parties were not allying with each other and actually standing on a common theme. In other words, when you have smaller parties, say you have 3 small parties who are all maybe contesting one region, for example, that the smallest of those parties would then throw its lot in with the other 2 larger ones, or, you know, they'll stand aside and stand one candidate and back that one candidate. And that is already happening. That is something that's started a while ago, and I think that will continue. So I honestly don't believe that there's any risk of splitting the vote. This is a common trope, which is often sort of chuntered out by some SNP diehards who still think that this is 2014 and that they're the only game in town, and that to have any other parties in the game would split the vote. Obviously, times have changed dramatically. It's no longer, they're not the only party of independence. There are other choices now.
Correct. And, you know, we've learned from SNP 1 and 2 that the second vote isn't the way to go. You lose 1 million odd votes because they just don't get tallied up. That's the D'Hondt system. We have to work the system. But on that, Gordon, just to add a bit as well, because I know up here Fergus Ewing is standing as an independent. The other smaller parties have come back and are not throwing their hat into the ring. They're allowing him to get the list seat. So that means there's a better chance. It's not splitting the vote. And the second thing I would say is, I remember Colette Walker speaking to me about a by-election in Hamilton where Michael Shanks got in, Armitage Shanks. Colette was getting accused of splitting the SNP vote, but she was saying that no, these people weren't going to vote for the SNP anyway. They had gone, SNP had lost them. I'm collecting my selection of voters who appealed to my policies and were pushed away by the SNP's policies. So she's not splitting any vote. If she wasn't there, she would the votes would have gone. They wouldn't have gone to the SNP.
Well, if I could stop you for a moment there, Norrie, there was a recent, I would say, an interaction on social media where somebody was pointing out that the very wording that the SNP has used when they're advising people how to use their vote in Holyrood was, first of all, to pick the person they wanted to represent them in the constituency, and then to vote for the party they wanted in the lists. Now, in doing that, that implied that they should vote for the SNP first and second, because A, they would want their SNP candidate in the constituency, but they'd also want the SNP party in the list. And in saying that, they presented it as though it was the only choice, which of course it isn't. It's not a wise choice, not if you want to get independence candidates into the list. As we know, it doesn't work. The arithmetic doesn't stack up. The D'Hondt system is designed to prevent successful constituency parties from gaining list seats. It just doesn't work. So that's well known. I think it's
It is. We've known this since it was inception. Since the inception of it back in the day, we've had, and the only person that have really worked it out are the unionists.
Yeah,
They've worked it out to get a half and half share using the list system. Because if the constituents all went to the SNP, well, the other half have got to go to other parties, and they've worked it. And then that's why you get people like Annie Wells, who was suddenly unaware she was elected, but on 2,000 odd votes she got in. Now, if you can get in 2,000 votes, it's what your vote is worth a lot. You must vote for an independence candidate. Don't think it's a waste of time. Because I've heard this argument, Gordon. Oh, these people have 2% in the polls, 4%. There is a campaign, underground campaign going on just now, and it's gathering a lot of steam. And the ISP and I4I and other parties, Sovereignty, I'd never heard of Sovereignty, I do now. They're all coming to the fore. And by kings, they are very intelligent people. They have got vision. They have got guts. Do not, at your peril, overlook them because you think they've got only 2% in the polls. That's the wrong way to start this. Be positive. Have a look at what they're saying and go for them.
To be honest with you, Nori, it's ever since the delunt system was devised and implemented in 1997, the idea of it obviously was to prevent an overall independence majority from developing in Holyrood, and it largely worked. Alex Salmond, I think, has made history by proving that he could actually break the system. But at that time, there weren't these other parties available to vote for in the list. And he did it by just submerging the entire system in millions of votes, and he had the opportunity to do it. But that opportunity is never coming back. And the unionist side, if you want to call them that, the United Kingdom parties, they constantly tactically vote in the lists. If there's a strong candidate from the Tories, the Labour candidate will step aside and everybody will throw their weight behind that person so that the SNP can't win that seat. Also, a pro-independent candidate can't win that seat. So if it's good enough for them to game their own system, then there's no reason why we shouldn't.
Exactly, Gordon, exactly. I'll carry on through these. There's a few more. Robert Fowler says, even if the SNP are not making significant moves towards independence, who will you be voting for? There is no other party strong enough to do what is required. A strong membership sends a message to unionists that we are still here and fighting. It does no harm to be a member, but still vote for another indie party in the list.
Interesting. Well, he's got a point in a way, because we certainly know that in constituency voting, it's very difficult to get an independent candidate elected who wants independence, because the SNP is such a strong position. So most of us, I think, would have to admit that in the main, just for pragmatic reasons, we will probably vote SNP in the first ballot, and then we will very carefully consider which of the alternative independence parties to vote for in the list in our own regions, and vote for that person, because that realistically provides the best opportunity to fill Holyrood with as many pro-independence candidates as possible, even if we're having to hold our noses a wee bit and vote SNP in the first vote. It's just realistic to do it that way.
I know. Julie Nichols says, SNP really annoy me, but what choice do we have? The alternatives are unionists. She's right.
There you go. It's a crystallization in one sentence. What exactly? But we have choices in the list, and I think that's what we need to remember.
Correct. I think the list, don't be confused about the name of the party. It's not all about SNP in the second vote. It's about something completely different. Traffic goods. Wow, much better. Really nice, bright, fairly smart, quick intro onto very important facts right away. That was for last week's show. Thank you very much. Chris Barton, smart grand, she says, best yet, they keep on getting better. Linda D, many thanks, guys, we're keeping the faith. Tam McNeish, Chris Barton, thanks all for your kind words. People are liking the show. Caroline Campbell is the one. Gordon, we have to stop battering the SNP constantly. But then she goes, I am the first to criticise them. So you can criticise them, but we can't.
Okay.
I can criticise them and their ministers for their inaction on independence. I could cry. I am so frustrated at times. But us, Gordon, we will be turning many away from the only party that can get enough votes to get us through. We all need to get behind them. Hold your nose, vote SNP, then we can sort it all out after May.
That's it. Yeah, this is a very clear example of how SNP members are conflicted at the moment. They don't want to belittle their party, and they feel aggrieved that people like you and I are criticising them openly on the airwaves day in and day out. And I can get that, I can understand they want to defend the party that they've been members of all their lives. But it's obvious to me from their last correspondent that she also feels very disappointed in the SNP. It's just that her loyalties and her common sense are clashing with each other here.
Yeah.
She doesn't know really how to support the SNP and still manage to get more independence candidates elected. So all I would say to that lady, and thank you incidentally for your comment.
Yeah, Caroline.
Vote SNP in the first vote. Support your own party there. But when it comes to the list vote for a realistic alternative who can be elected, because your SNP candidate will probably not win, simply because the system is rigged against them. So vote for the next best thing, and that will be another pro-independence party. No matter what their vote share is, they have a much better chance of being elected than your SNP candidate. And so that is really all you can do to help your party and to help your country at the same time.
Totally agree, Gordon. But there are ones that counter that. Jerry Gribbins says, sorry, but the new SNP, as he calls them, deserve every criticism levied at them. They avoid the Indy question and have become inept in government. They are a party of devolutionists.
Okay, that's a very common view. But I think it's important to recognise that the SNP's fallen victim to a disease which afflicts all parties, especially when they have served more than 2 terms as government, that they lose track of what they're doing, they run out of ideas, and they regress back into what I would call internal policy making for things which are not relevant to the main cause. And this has happened to the Labour Party before, it's happened to the Tories before, it's now happening to the SNP, and it's a pattern that repeats in politics regularly. And the only way out of it is, as I say, to use your vote tactically. Since we have a double voting system, we need to make sure we benefit maximally from the first vote and the second vote, even if it means voting for different parties.
Yeah, it's just because, Gordon, the stakes are so high right now. Independence is imperative for a lot of us. If Scotland was an independent country, we would be talking here, we'd be slamming the SNP, hoping another party would get in, but because it's an independence election, half of us are wanting the SNP to get in the first vote, and then hoping that they move from their devolutionist position and are urged on by the candidates that have come in the list. And so you've got this kind of new backbone, if you like, in the parliament. If the SNP don't rise to what the other parties are saying, then we'll see them for what they are, just devolutionists. And for half of the people, that's a worry. For the other half, it's a worry if we don't get them in. So we're in a conundrum about where we're going with this. And the only people that can sort it all out, Gordon, is the SNP. They have to come out saying independence, right, left, and centre. They have to come out and say, we will work with this party, that party. We will support any UN colonisation process. There's none of that.
No,
nothing.
They're ignoring that, and I think there might be many reasons for that. But I was going to give you a sort of hypothetical what if here, and that what if is after the next general election in 2026. We end up with a reasonable sized number of SNP candidates elected in the first vote, but not quite enough to get a majority. Then they have to decide who they're going to ally with. Now, if we have a good, strong series of pro-independence candidates getting elected in the list, the SNP government the SNP grouping then has to decide who they're going to ally with to form a government. Now they're faced with two choices. They either ally with one or more of these smaller parties or candidates from the list who are in favour of independence, or they go with a unionist party like the Labour Party. Now, who do you think they will choose? I suspect that if they're in a weaker position in 2026, they will do anything rather than ally themselves with what they see as a competitor party for the independence vote, because that has been their position all the way through the last 15 years, is to deny they exist, these smaller parties, and basically to shut them out. I hope I'm wrong. This is a hypothetical. It might not happen that way.
Oh,
Maybe if there are fewer SNP MPs, many fewer, they have to then ally with a much larger cohort of pro-independence, independent MSPs from the lists. It will be interesting to see just how much the balance shifts in 2026 towards list MSPs who are not SNP members.
well, we lost you for a wee while there, Gordon, but we've got you back. You were hoping that something would stir the SNP into action. I would always remind people that politics works in a really funny way sometimes. If the SNP are looking for support for, say, a budget going through, and they need a few extra votes, then you can haggle. You can then, as an independence party, ISP or I4I or whoever, Sovereignty, whoever's in there, or ALPA, and they can say, well, we want the independence question right, left, and centre in return for our vote for your budget, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
but then you would see, and the papers would report it as the tail wagging the SNP dog, you know. So there's going to be a lot of coming to grips with all this, because we haven't had it before. Working so hard to get independence, you've got these parties that are going to have to find their feet and talk to each other, and that might take time. It might take time. Trust's a big thing in politics.
The bit that you missed, Norrie, when you lost reception was the fact that I was having a hypothetical situation where the SNP has not done well next year. They've lost a lot of their support, and they need an ally in order to form a pro-independence government. And if we are more successful in the list with independent candidates, that means the SNP would have to ally with them.
Yes.
But only if they needed those numbers. So I think if the balance tips enough, then the SNP will be forced to do it, whether they want to or not. They won't have a choice. If they want to govern, they will have to ally with this large grouping in the list. And that is really, I think, what we must aim for, is to tip the scales, from where they are now to the SNP down here and needing this other group, because that is the only thing I believe that will actually make them move.
I think so. That's that straw in the camel's back we can refer to, because it's going to be small, just that majority in the parliament to get through your budgets and your bills and whatever. It could be crucial if we don't have it, though.
The other thing that's very important here is to make sure we maximise the numbers of people who get to the polling booths. We are very bad at turning up. There is an old phrase I think I love to quote from Woody Allen. He said, "History is written by the people who bother to show up." And he's right, especially with democracies. So we need to show up in bigger numbers than the pro-UK party numbers.
That's as long as it is broad. Mm-hmm.
What else have we got in the postbag? Is that about it? Or are we?
No, there's a couple more. V King says, why do you think podcasts like Hollywood Sources never mention the UN decolonization issue? They've had Swinney and Sarwar on, but it's never been mentioned. It's also never been mentioned in either Holyrood by the SNP or Alaba.
My own personal opinion is because it wasn't their idea. If it had been the SNP idea to do this and they'd made the moves, it would be all over the newspapers. They would have adverts on every social medium claiming responsibility for it. The fact that it wasn't them is a severe embarrassment to the party because it's such an obvious route to go down. Why did they miss it? Why did people like Michael Russell not do this years ago and start down this route? And I think the obvious answer to that is it never occurred to them to do it. They were too comfortable playing this game of, action and reaction in the political system designed by the United Kingdom, which is basically just a tiny version of Westminster. And that's where they play their games. And unfortunately, the larger political goal of freeing the country has disappeared off their agenda. It just doesn't figure in the calculations. So it probably never occurred to the SNP to do this. But now that it's happened, they can't bear to admit it, that it wasn't them. They missed the ball. It was an open goal and they failed to kick the ball into the net.
Yeah. It just, but there's this thing called humble pie, Gordon. You just eat it and get on with it. You just put your hands up and say, this is such a good idea. We've overlooked this. Let's go with it. Or just play it down a wee bit. Just say, well, we'll let these guys go on with it, but we'll have to take care of the day job. But as long as you recognise it, Gordon, at some point, but there's been nothing, absolute nothing. And if we hadn't broadcast it on this forum, people would still be none the wiser about what's happening with the UN and Craig Murray's interventions and etc. etc.
You mentioned this Holyrood podcast earlier, and why? Was asking why it wasn't mentioned in that. Probably for the same reasons. That podcast is probably looking at the Westminster bubble and the Holyrood bubble only. And so they only want to talk to politicians. They don't want to talk to activists. They don't want to talk to historians. They don't want to talk to researchers. They want to talk to the politicians. But they don't ask the question, have you heard of decolonization? What is your view on this new move? No, the question doesn't get asked because that's not the point of the podcast. The point of the podcast is to see how they're playing the game. With the other combatants in this tiny fishbowl. And that's all it's about. These kind of shows are all the same.
Yeah, and they always say that the main actors in this are politicians, and we're well past that. We're well past that.
That's just simply because we've gotten used to the idea that representative democracy, which is the only kind that we're allowed to have, where we elect people who can then do whatever the hell they like, basically, regardless of our views. It means that they can lie to get into office and then do what they want. And that's the Westminster system all over. And that makes good telling.
There's a couple more, Gordon, just before we get on to our topics. Tam McNeice says, for your information, the energy system is controlled by Westminster, but the SNP can stop wind turbines being built using the planning systems regulations.
I think we covered the topic before, Nori, and what we both realised through just watching the reality on the ground is that despite local authorities' best efforts to prevent turbines being built in places where they shouldn't be, they're constantly overridden by the Holyrood government, whose reporters, who seem to be these anonymous appointees, can just decide arbitrarily that it should go ahead. And so we don't have any control over it. Planning is basically bulldozed out of the way in the big effort to get as much power down to the south of England as possible. You still with me there, Nori? You seem to have frozen up.
Says, some sanity every Friday and common sense on the subject of our liberation. Thank F for you two guys. Last one. On that, the previous question, Alan Crowe says, the biggest onshore wind farm is right on my doorstep, 112 of the biggest turbines available, and guess what? They are more static than active. SSEC have apparently been paid £12 million in constraint fees since commissioned last July. In other words, grid can't cope.
Exactly. The interconnectors that cross the border do not have the capacity to carry additional power south. And this is why we're seeing at the moment, to my knowledge, at least 4 new subsea direct links from the north of Scotland to parts of northern England,
Yep,
because it's the only way they can get that power to where England wants it to go. It's not for our benefit. Our energy prices will continue to rise. We're probably paying 3 times more than we should be for the energy that we are actually producing. So it seems like the energy that's produced here doesn't belong to us at all. It actually belongs to London, and they are just employing private companies to get it to them, no matter what our planning officials tell them.
I know, I know. It's bizarre. Shall we move on to a couple of the stories that have caught our eye, Gordon? By the way, if you want to press the like button and the subscribe button, get the wee bell. You'll notify us when we're on every Friday. Do that, it helps us. You were talking yesterday, and we talked about it last week about the Orange marches in particularly Glasgow, but they are in other parts of Scotland. The destruction and the chaos they bring. And
Yeah,
why are we putting up with this in 2025?
this is a great question, and nobody really seems to be able to provide an answer to this. But when it comes down to it, the people responsible for allowing these parades to take place are local officials in our towns and cities, whose job it is to allocate time for parades and marches and demonstrations. That is a part of normal freedom of expression, and that should remain.
Yeah.
The problem
Mm-hmm.
is that the Orange Order appears to have exceptional ability to have their marches always approved. No matter how big they are, no matter how disruptive or destructive they might be, we're forced to endure them. And I have to wonder who it is in these committees who decides whether a march should be allowed to go ahead or not. Now remember, many of these Orange Lodge marches trail a wake of destruction as they pass through the town, because I would say they're hangers on, they're entourage. It's not necessarily the people marching and playing the flutes and the drums who are the problem. It's the other people who are following them, who all get really drunk, really abusive, spit at people, shout abuse, call people racist names, and it's allowed to continue happening. And the only reason it could possibly be allowed to continue to happen is that this is a political statement which is being made through proxies of the United Kingdom, the proxies being the Orange Order, who have little branches and little Orange lodges dotted about all over Scotland and all over Northern Ireland. And obviously they import probably at least half of the people who attend, because they wouldn't have the numbers on their own. And it's allowed to happen simply for political reasons. It makes us feel like we are being bullied by these great big guys steaming down our streets and shouting abuse and singing songs in which they joyously declare that they hate all Catholics and want to do them damage, want to kill them. And this is not classified as a hate crime. Why is it not classified as a hate crime? It should be. Those individuals should be prosecuted for that. If the march were peaceful, which it definitely isn't, nearly always it isn't, then it would be a different story. And I don't think people would necessarily object to it happening, they just wouldn't turn up to watch it, which is our right as individuals.
Yes, when you look at the destruction and the chaos and the fear and terror they bring onto the streets, I mean, I remember in Hamilton, a couple of incidences. Somebody pressed the green man, to get across the road, and it was they were just coming up. So the red light was on, all the cars had stopped. They were coming up the other side. They went right through it. But I think it was a guy and his wife with the pram. They were shouted and abused with it beyond belief at stopping a parade. They pressed, and by the way, a green man came up, and they were all shouting at the green man. And then inanimate object that's coloured green, and they're shouting at it. This is the bizarre behaviour of these people. And Gordon, have you ever wondered about the divide and rule of this country? You'll know that the football season, the Celtic Rangers game isn't on because the season's at a close. What do they bring in instead to divide and rule us? They bring in these marches. You'll never see a march when there's a Rangers game on, will you? Because you've got the Rangers to. It's keeping their bases covered. Keep this orange Britain flag on the streets, down the streets, make people aware that this is what they are and who they should be. But yet, most of us, and polls are coming out today and yesterday and this week, Gordon, most of us want these things banned, or at least one. You have one march a year, and you go round and you finish up in Ibrox Stadium, and you have a big collection of yourselves there, and you can salute yourself and pat your backs in the stadium. That is a alternative. Why are we not saying to them at this point, and probably it's because of this, just recently, the newest member of the Scottish Parliament for the Labour Party in Hamilton, Stonehouse and Larkhall was a member of the Orange Lodge.
And again,
he's now sitting in the Parliament. This is how far these tentacles reach in Scottish society, high Scottish society. And don't get me started on the police, because that's just as bad. So what have we got here, Gordon? We've got Orangemen in the councils, in the Parliament, in the police, pulling all the strings. That's why it's never, ever been challenged.
Well, there used to be, Nori, as well as the Orange Order, there used to be accusations that many of the councils were populated by not only members of the Orange Lodge, but of the Masonic Order as well, which has been, I think it's fair to say, historically connected to unionism. And that's probably putting it very mildly. And these two organisations, the Orange Order is probably a bit more open, but the Masonic Order is supposedly secret. And so you never really know who anybody is or what they do. Well, you know their occupation, but that's about it. But you don't their political affiliations. And only people who the Masonic Order think are likely to be pro-British are usually invited to join the ranks. Certainly not people like yourself and myself. Anybody who has any kind of nationalistic tendencies at all will probably never be invited. But they also operate in these high organisations in high positions of power, because they're usually local businessmen, business owners, people like that, who have a high standing in terms of unionism and also in terms of the business community. So they look after each other and they infiltrate these positions of power and allow these things to happen. But I would say your comment about Larkhall and Hamilton is an interesting one. There are enclaves of extreme poverty and deprivation where unionism is like a rose on a pile of manure. And the people who think that the union is so great are some of the poorest people in our society. Why do they think this? They seem to think that living in poverty created by the country which they claim to support is good. It's good for them. It's good for the country. They just do not see the larger picture at all, you know? They're happy.
I think, Gordon, I think this is a point. This is a point where we have to say you've been colonised to such an extent you don't even realise it. And it explains this fully in Alf Baird's book, Doon Hodden. You'll find that how they can usurp the most ardent minds, the toughened minds, and get them on your side. I mean, they've done it in the clearances. They said to people up here way back, the best way to serve your country is join the army. And they were getting more money, and they were getting new clothes, they were getting to wear their kilt again and all the rest of it. And they went along into war, into battle. And they managed to turn this round. The only thing you've got left is to fight for us. But we'll make it worth your while.
Do you know?
And that kind of mentality is there again.
Do you know which other country follows that exact same model? In the present time, it's Russia. Russia has a vast poverty problem, and the only option for young men from the far oblast, and I mean Russia is enormous, is to join
Yeah.
the army, right? Get enormous amounts of money to join the army, go fight somewhere like Ukraine, get killed, never
Mhm.
receive the money, and then the whole system just starts again. And that whole idea has been going for decades, and it is a
So,
terrific way of keeping people in line, keep them poor, keep them keen, offer them the only option that they have to serve their country in the military, so that you've got a ready supply of cannon fodder that doesn't matter to you. Doesn't matter if they die
so
or not. They're gone. You've used them up, and that is a horrific thing to do to anybody who is stuck in poverty the way a lot of these Orange Order members appear to be.
do you think, Gordon, when we're an independent country, the Orange Order will still be trying to bump its gums?
Oh, they'll try, but I think it needs to be regulated in a different way. I don't think that we should ever curtail the right to exist and to hold opposing views, but the way they're doing it needs to be stopped. And
Yeah.
that is the essence of a good democracy, that you allow dissent, you allow different opinions, even ones that you vehemently oppose and think are abhorrent. People have the right to say it, but they don't have the right to impose it, and they don't have the right to threaten people, damage property, or injure others in the process. So they just have
Correct.
to apply the same rules to these people, and that's it.
There was another thing you were wanting to talk about, and this is the fact that we should be looking more at tidal
Yeah.
energy because of a unique breakthrough. Joe, you were talking about this yesterday on your own podcast, but do you want to flesh out a bit more about what was happening?
Well, what appears to have happened is that Major, and one of Scotland's bigger tidal energy companies, has been running an experiment for about 6 years where they've had an array of, I think it was 6 turbines uh, in the sea between northern Scotland and Orkney. And there's a powerful tidal stream runs through that channel 4 times a day. So they sent the machines down there, and they were expecting at some point during this long run that one or more of these machines would either fail or they would require some maintenance to keep them running. But what surprised them was after 6 years, the machines were still running perfectly. And when they pulled one of the machines out of the water to have a look at it, it actually didn't need any maintenance at all. They
Wow.
designed it so well, and they had built it so well that none of the contaminants and the salt corrosion appear to have affected it in any meaningful way at all. Now, that's a big deal, not just for that company, but it tells us something interesting, and that is that an assumption that was made about tidal energy that it would be too expensive because we'd have to keep maintaining these turbines in a harsh environment,
Mm-hmm.
appears to be wrong. And that means that they can build more of these turbines designed to this same formula and
Mm-hmm.
put them throughout these tidal races all around Scotland, and they will generate power continuously, regularly, every time the tide runs, and it's entirely predictable. You can computer model it throughout the entire year. You can arrange to have your energy storage to store the energy while the tides are not moving, to feed the grid and keep the baseload running until the machines start running again in the next tidal flow. And that means you don't need wind. And the benefit of that, as you're probably already beginning to realise, is that a lot of these machines that have been forced onto the people in mainland Highland Scotland could be removed. And not only removed, but removed permanently because they're not as reliable. They have to switch them off a lot because they can't balance the load. The wind's so unpredictable. And actually
Right.
just sell them, sell them to England. If you want some onshore
Aye.
turbines, we've got some second-hand ones at a good price. Now, that is a win-win for Scots because not only does our tidal energy industry suddenly increase dramatically, as long as we make sure that we manufacture these machines here in our own shipyards, our own engineering factories, then the jobs will be located here. And any maintenance that is necessary will be done here. And the benefits will connect locally to the grid in very remote areas where the power is really needed, especially in the winter. all of which makes our energy infrastructure far more robust and entirely predictable and controllable. Whereas before, the national grid system in England and Scotland was struggling to try and balance the base load when the winds were varying constantly or dropping. So this solves the problem, and it would ignite a huge influx of investment into Scottish engineering at the same time. So for me, this is an enabler for the future of an independent Scotland to become completely independent in energy production and to be able to generate constant base load 24 hours a day and export that energy wherever we like and sell it instead of giving it away.
Do you know this, Gordon? We are blessed in Scotland. These tidal races are vicious and strong, and when you harness the power that's in them, you get a great return back from them. And one thing we can depend on is tides. They come in and they come out. So we can set our clocks by them. Wind's a bit different. So you're right. We should actually start thinking about where our better mode of energy is coming from and keep it for ourselves. And any excess we have, we can then sell off. It's a no-brainer. The way we've got it now, where we're paying more for our energy and it's on our backyard, is just, they're kicking sand in our face. They're absolutely looking down, spitting on us. They treat us with disdain. This has got to stop. This has got to change. Because if not, we're going to be run down until we're nothing. And we're burdened with bills and we can't pay them. Maybe that'll be the catalyst for people getting off their seats and out in the streets. I don't know, but it's going to take something like that. But the way it's going just now, it just isn't fair. That's all I can say about it. It isn't fair.
There are two well-known podcasters, including Robin McAlpine, who you've mentioned many times, but also another economist who I recently read, and this is an Englishman, incidentally, who was saying that in Scotland, the energy system needs to be taken back into public ownership, needs to be renationalised in order for the people of Scotland to see the full benefits of the wealth that it generates. Yep. And he was saying it doesn't mean that the companies will lose money. It's just that the people of Scotland will not be the ones generating the income from those companies. It'll be the other countries who want the energy, want to buy it. So they still get the energy exports, they still make their money, but the people of Scotland get their energy at a price which is much, much lower than, shall we say, the international price for a kilowatt hour of energy. And that's the way it should be. If it's your energy, you look after your own people first. And the only way you can do that is by nationalising that resource, because it's a key resource, like water is, like food, you know. And these things have to be in the control of the nation itself, the people of the nation itself, because it's us that they belong to. These are our resources. We shouldn't be selling them to other people who then sell them back to us at an inflated price. That's hyper.
The thing is, Gordon, Maslow's hierarchy of needs include things like food, shelter, heat, warmth, all those kind of things. Yeah. Those are the basic things we need to survive. Those are the basic things we're getting taxed on. The only thing they haven't taxed us on is fresh air, the air that we breathe. That will happen when they can harness it and sell it back to us. That's the only thing we have. A roof over our head, mortgaged. The water we drink, luckily for us in Scotland, and for anyone around the world watching this, our water is the best ever, and it's a nationalised water system, and we can drink it out of our taps without fear of contamination. You can't say that across the border in England, where they've contaminated it. All the things that we need to survive, they've taxed, apart from our water and our air. We have to maintain a country that gives out those things for free, because that's what keeps us alive and that's what keeps us happy. Make no mistake about it. If we don't get these things, heat, we die. If we don't get clean water, we die. If we don't get good food, we die. That's the basic end point of all this, Gordon. We need to take this back into national control. There should be no profit made out of the utilities that we need as a peoples to survive, or you know, or get or even just to enjoy life, be happy.
Yeah,
The thought of not having debt because your house is mortgaged, take that away from people, and what do you get? You get happy people. You get a more content people. You get healthy people. When we're the way we're living just now, um, this is no way to live. From cradle to grave, we should be happier than what we are, but we're not. We're always angry, and we're always looking for excuses and answers, and we never get them.
I think the other thing, Dory, is it's not just that we feel angry all the time, that we're scared for our own existence. We're worried about not being able to pay for things that we need. And we're being kept in that state of fear on purpose because we're much more easily manipulated when we're desperate than if we were comfortable. If people were comfortable and didn't worry about their energy bills, they could turn the heating on whenever they needed it, they had clean water, the food was affordable, etc. Nobody would be worried about those basic fundamental things. And they'd be able to not only be happy, but they'd be able to go out into the world and, you know, get a job and perform better, actually become more productive because they're not worried about that, they're not fearful of it. And largely that system, once it's set up, is a mix of a little bit of socialism and a little bit of capitalism. The socialism part looks after us, the capitalism part allows us to export and make money from the things that we've got too much of. And that is just basic economics. That's the way it
Yeah,
should be. But
that's how it should be.
doing it this way is not profitable for the fat cats. The big
No.
corporations, the lobbyists, the tame politicians, the politicians that they bought off do not want us to do that. And so we can't. We're being prevented from it.
Gordon, can I just say a point here? This is not a British and Irish Lions jersey. It's an Aberdeen football top. For those that are thinking I've gone to the dark side, Scotland's my country. The British Lions and the Irish Lions is a corporate nonsense. But this is
Yeah.
my team, Aberdeen. So wake up. Can you see it properly? It doesn't say
Well,
British Lions or Muppets.
here's the thing,
Anyway,
Dory. The British Lions is a myth anyway, because the English flag is three leopards on a shirt. They had to change it. They had to
I
change it to
know.
lions because Scotland had a lion on its royal flag. So I'm not fooled by that. British
No,
leopard.
you know what else, Gordon? They call their women's team the Lionesses. Oh,
No, just as well they weren't dogs, isn't it?
oh, I'm telling you. Oh. Right, Gordon, I want to move on here because our MSP, Kate Forbes, has been outlining her vision of developing tourism in the Highlands, and it has caused a lot of anger. I wonder if I can just read a couple of bits out to you. She was writing for the National, and she was going, my constituency of Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch contains the most beautiful da-da-da. And she goes on for the first few chapters of how Loch Ness and all the rest of it is beautiful world's treasures. But behind, I want to get your opinion on this. She says this, behind every single one of these famous landmarks is a thriving Highland community which protects the heritage and culture of villages and towns. What do you think she's meaning by that?
No idea. Sounds like a load of political waffle to me.
Yeah, but she's putting the onus back on the people, right?
Of course.
She's saying the people should look after these iconic places because every single one of these is a Highland community. Right, say Drumnadrochit, it's a Highland community. That means I am looking after and I'm protecting the heritage and the culture of this village and town. I'm too busy trying to make a living, Gordon, trying to make ends meet. I have
Yeah.
no desire to stand up for the village in the
So
capacity she's asking.
why was Kate Forbes, kind of introducing this first? What was her main point going to be?
Well, the main point is because she's trying to come back and win her seat because of the election next year. That's the bottom line. And she's saying to the people here, Tourism. We've got to look at how we deal with the tourism. And you know what her big plan is? She says it's always been a mainstay of the Highland economy. It hasn't really, because there's been smelters, there's been pulp mills, there's been all kinds of things up here, not just tourism. But it is now, you could say. But there's been an increase due to Instagram advertising. With that comes the challenges of managing huge volumes of people in small places that never expected such high numbers. You are gaslighting out your arse, Kate Forbes, because we knew fine since 1952, since the Scottish Secretary, the first one in 1952, said there's a new business coming, a new industry approaching the Highlands. We must get, and that business is tourism. And he says we'll have to get our roads and an infrastructure up to date. 1950, Gordon. These roads have been touched. We're on single track roads half the time. The B-52, every single day, the sirens go out of that fire engine, that fire station, they're out, crashes all over the place. And she's talking about, we never expected these numbers. Don't you dare say that to us. Don't you dare. We knew all. Gordon, I've stayed in the Highlands most of my life. Apart from going to Aberdeen and going to Hamilton, 2 parts, most of the time, all my family have been up here. We know the destruction tourism brings.
Yep.
And to come up and say, well, we weren't expecting this, just boils my blood. And she said, over the past few years, she goes on to say, Gordon, I have drawn together local community bodies, public sector, blah, blah, blah. I've done this. I've constantly worked alongside Glenfinnan Community Council, dally-da, but what have we done? And that has all resulted in, I'm quoting here, an extended car park.
Wow. I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, and she says, but within years, especially driven by the impacts of COVID and the rising popularity of the viaduct in Glenfinnan, the car park was too small. Just building more car parks seems counterproductive. So she's made a car park, now she says it's not enough. Laying tarmac over the best of the Highlands is short-sighted. And so we've been exploring ways to change behaviour. So what does that mean? She's wanting us out of our cars, Gordon. And on the shuttle buses.
Whose behaviour is she attempting to change? Because her party and her government has encouraged mass tourism through the so-called Highland or Scottish 500 route, where bus tour with maybe 70 or 80 passengers on these huge buses, these tour buses, clogging up the roads, visiting places where there aren't facilities for them, admittedly, there can't be because the roads weren't designed to carry that load, is now saying what? That we need more car parks, we need more toilets? What is she actually saying? Or is she just trying to get...
The thing that's getting people vexed about this, Gordon, she's highlighting all the problems, but she's offering no solutions to fix those problems. Yeah. And now people are coming out. She's saying, I'll give you one remarkable statement she's come out with. She's saying, it is incredible that anyone thinks it's safe or appropriate to park along an A road such as the A82, which goes past Drumnadrocket. And yet visitors, she's blaming the visitors, are so determined to see the steam train that they do. So this is Port William. So people are stopping their cars in a lay-by to watch the steam train go past, right? And she's saying that shouldn't happen. That's not allowed. Well, here's the deal, Kate. Why don't you make facilities that people can go with a picnic and sit there and watch the steam train go past on a nice sunny day? Why does it always have to cost money to do stuff? Why are you charging people all the time? This is a privatization mentality, Gordon. We have to charge them for parking, for car parks and all this laybys, for goodness sake. You know?
Nori, listen, I'm afraid we're getting very close to the end of the show, and I know I'm going to be a little bit tight for time, but I wanted you to just make sure we got that last point over about Kate Forbes. I think we need to tie...
Yeah, well, we've got 1 minute, Gordon. Can I just mention a message back? Employs 245,000 people, she says. Really? How many of those jobs are part-time or temporary? How many are low-paid? How much pollution is produced by 2,000 camper vans visiting the Highlands and Islands each year? Tourism has been a disaster for many locals in the Highlands. Have you seen the social media complaints of crofters saying tourism and tourists are literally defecating on their crofts? It's disgusting. Scotland can do better than to have an economy reliant on tourism. And by letting the Highlands and Islands be trashed, you are literally killing the golden goose.
Well, what
More
a
on
way
this
to.
to come, Gordon.
I love to end on a defecation story, Nori. It just ties the
Aye,
show up.
I know.
Anyway, I'm afraid
But
everybody
listen,
was.
Gordon, listen, we'll come back to this next week. I'm sure there's going to be more to speak about. But listen, I really enjoyed the comments and the views. I hope you did too. And we'll be back next week, Gordon.
Well, indeed, Nori. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday at 9:30. In the meantime, keep the faith.
Keep the
Cheers.
faith. All the best, guys. All the best.